Good. They're progressing. We're pretty blessed that we got two quarterbacks that started games last year and played well. That's a rarity, as you know, nowadays. I think to have true game experience for depth in that room. But him and Jason are both having a great camp. So learning, growing, still things to improve on. But, going into a fall when you got two guys that starting games, you're kind of blessed, Well, as I've said before, one of the things I think that we do a really good job is making sure that our best personnel on the field, whatever they are. If we got 7 really good offensive linemen, we'll have packages for them, right? If you got 5 really good receivers, we'll have packages for them. And when you look at where we're at, especially from a skill position standpoint, there's a lot of competition and parity in a lot of the rooms. And so one of the things that we'll be able to use is, multiple personnel groupings in each of them, right? And have a nice little package for everything. Always. It's not just the quarterback position, but it's definitely all positions. They'll be at some point, I'm sure they'll release a two deep, and it's the names that you don't see in that two deep that'll have to perform and execute in any college football team that will really, a lot of times, win or lose a game. So, the quarterback position, obviously, it is really important that those guys are ready to go. And both those guys are doing a really good job in fall camp, too. We are so much further along as a program than we were a year ago in terms of understanding how we do things and understanding the offense. You don't like talking about the past so much, but as I explained to the guys yesterday, I said it's a frame of reference for everyone to understand. I had my voice. Last year at this time, my voice was already gone because we feel like we're yelling and the expectations in the field about how we transition, how we do things, and that's not an issue at all, right? Our guys have really understand how we're doing it, and we're further along.
Along those lines, I know it's still relatively new being here, but this is pretty significant for campus to name a quarterback or Lance all but name him, right? What does that do for a rebuilding program? You mentioned you got to have guys that are ready to play. Obviously, you might need them all, but the idea of just building that thing as you look into the future.
Well, I think it goes to show that you identify guys that you have confidence in, right? And we have confidence in him. I'm not saying that we don't have confidence in Jason. Like I said, he's had a couple of really good practices right now. He actually had a really good spring football, right? So when you can go out there and you say those sort of things, and hey, this guy's the starter at this position, or this guy's going to play here, and a lot of times that stuff is just organically happens because you look at, some guy played 1,000 reps last year, and now you kind of, you pencil him as the starter this year. But it gives everyone confidence that that's a person that we believe in, right? As a staff and as a program. But going back to, the competition piece, one of the things that we're trying to do here is definitely not have anyone in our program start by default. Does that make sense? Like, we don't want anyone in our program just to play because they're here and they're the last one here, right? So we always want to have competition. And I alluded to this in the spring when someone asked a question about the quarterbacks. When you have competition in that room and when you see that the two people are competing in a healthy way, right, to perform, that trickles into all the positions in the football team, in all 3 phases.
Does your mind ever go anymore to where Jalen was that close to redshirting entirely last year and then now he's here? Do you think much on that or have you moved on?
Well, I think if you go back to that scenario in that moment in time, we wouldn't be saying those things as confidently as we are now about his performance had he not had a couple more games of experience under his belt.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how I would say that.
Andy, he said he wanted to spend some time during the offseason trying to slow the game down and just understand more of the mental side of things. I know it's 2 days, so you don't know that yet, but how much do you also feel like that's something that will help benefit him as he moves on, just reading coverages and understanding what's being asked of him and getting what's given?
Yeah, so what we have tried to do as you grow and build a program, and I've said this before, so I don't mean to be redundant, but last year was all about let's eliminate bad football, right? We have to do that, okay? And that's still a focus. We're never going to stop de-emphasizing that. But what I propose to the offense, and specifically the quarterback position, is now we can shift from avoiding bad football to the spectrum of let's execute really good football. Right? Okay, and obviously you win a lot of games when you're doing that, right? Those two things together. And so our focus has now shifted on, as you're pointing out, the execution of what's happening in those 4 to 6 seconds of a snap, of a play. But when you talk about, the game slowing down, right? And you talk about, which is almost cliche, but how does a game slow down? Well, all of our guys now have, what I say, reference the calls of our offense so much more. They've practiced it so many more reps. You know, they understand it. We go out there, and a year ago when we walk through, and again, I'm just using it as a reference point, the corrections that are being made are just numerous and frequent. The details. And now we go out there, we call the play, the guys break the huddle lineup, and there's just, here we go. We know how to do it. And so the focus has really shifted. We're eliminating a lot of the stress that happens outside of the 4 to 6 seconds, you with me, of an actual snap, which, to your point, allows our kids to play fast and win with speed, and the game, as you say, slows down for them.
I guess maybe to that point, overall, scheme-wise, as things evolve, you're going to add wrinkles, but how much do you think you've got down kind of the basics of what you want to have installed at this point? How much are you now able to kind of build upon that? Being it's year two, and guys are familiar with what you generally, how you want to approach this game.
Oh, significantly. You know, one of the other things that has shifted for us is, you know, last year you just are kind of getting out there and just teaching guys how to run the plays. And you probably de-emphasize like what we call situational football and situational awareness. This camp, we've been able to focus a lot on, you know, already, just 2 days in, the situations that come up in the game that we need to win and execute in for us to win close games. And so, again, that focus from, hey, let's just worry about not turning the ball over and giving up sacks and all the things that we know, right, penalties. And we did. We took big major strides in that area to now to let's go out here and execute on a 3rd and medium, right? Let's convert in the red zone, right? And we got 1st and goal inside the 10. That's been a lot of the focus fall camp right now.
Curious for you, knowing someone and going and finding someone like that played 13 snaps last year. How does that evaluation process go, and what was it about him you saw that made you be like?
Well, I think when you look at it, when you have older players coming to the program, right? There's a couple of different things that, you know, that they have experience, you know, being in a Division I program and all the expectations from, you know, nutrition, right, and to being placed on time and a lot of those things. So their assimilation into kind of our culture that way seems to be a little bit better, right? You know what I mean, a little bit faster. And a lot of times when you think about people moving on, they're looking for opportunity, right? And that's what we provide for a lot of players, is how we practice and how we do things. So they're going to get a lot of practice reps to be able to demonstrate what they're able to do. But his learning and his growth isn't much different than other people's, right? The advantage that he would have coming into a program, again, to reference where we were a year ago, is we had 110 people who had no idea what was going on. Do you follow me? And now we have a handful of new players on all, you know, all phases of the game. We got 90% of them that know how we've practiced. Right, they know how we do things, and then when programs really grow and take off, and when kids really have an understanding of football, it's when peer teaching starts to occur. When, let's say, Lawrence Arnold can grab a young, brand new receiver in the program and say, "Hey, here's how we run this route." That is way more meaningful than when I say it to him, right? Because I probably already said it to him, and then a guy like Lawrence said it to him on the practice field after he made the mistake. You know what I mean? So. All the new guys that have joined our program are going to benefit a lot from having 90% of the players come back and knowing how we do things.
And what was it in the skill set that you felt like we need to have this to our roster?
A mature physical body, right? You know what I mean? Who on his high school film, he did an unbelievable job, like his contested catch ability, right? You know what I mean when I say that. You know, his speed, right? All the things that you would think about the characteristics of a good receiver, he definitely demonstrated on his high school film. You know, and then as you investigate and research people that you're having to join your program, you know, the feedback that you get about, is it different, right, from high school than what we saw in college? The answer is no. So we're excited about it.
How do you see him fitting into the mix? Again, I know it's just day two.
Yep.
But clearly, you're plans through the summer and trying to see how guys are going to fit in your spot. You've got guys coming back who are still generally unproven, and then you've got another guy who's unproven, Doug. How does that all come together?
Well, they grow together. Right? And so sometimes when, and there's good and bad about this, maybe we're talking to somebody brand new to the program, and to your point about everyone in our room still needs to develop in the receiver room. We're talking to them too. And so there can be growth together, which should provide some a spark, because everyone knows that there's an opportunity, right? Nobody comes in, there's nothing established like, hey, this, you know, we got 4 guys back who played 700 snaps a year for the last 3 years, right? So everyone knows, and that goes back to the competition thing that we've talked about in this program before, about how that internal healthy competition makes everybody better. And I can just go back to my college experience when I played. You know, I was a center. I competed for the starting job when with one of my best friends, right? And to learn how to do that healthy, and I know that we both got better from that, right?
You look at guys you gotta keep happy and feed.
Yep, and that's a challenge, I think, all across the board, right? Because if you ask, you could probably pull every one of our skill players in here that would tell you that they all need the ball and want the ball, and we want that. So, right, we don't discourage having confidence in their ability to perform. But first of all, we multiple, right? And I've said before that your personnel is the system, right? The system should never dictate, well, this guy can't play because he doesn't play our version of inside receiver or running back. And so our goal is always to let's get our best football players in the field, right? Whatever that might be. And so as you put it out in the past, and we have a history of being able to utilize two backs and multiple tight ends and multiple receivers and all these personnel groupings to allow us to put stress on defenses, right? But still staying within the framework of things that we do. So to your point about how do we go about doing that, what are the things we do, we're still in the growth phase with all those guys, and we're still evaluating, right? And we're still trying to figure out, and I think this is one of the most important things that coaches have to do, and it's one of the hardest things, is really evaluate what are the capabilities of your players and what are their limitations, right? Because every player has limitations, right? Every team across the country wishes that their kid was 1/10 of a second faster in the 40, minimally, right? Okay, everybody. But the programs that get it figured out, and this is where we're at, is what is that person's true capability and what's his limitation? And as long as you can fit those puzzle pieces together correctly, then you'll have a good synergy on the offensive side of the ball.
So when you tailor an offense to the guys that you build and their strengths and their skills, you also can't get away from the principles of how you want to run things. That seems like that could be kind of tenuous at times.
Well, I like to believe that we're multiple enough schematically that whatever package or play type needs to grow, we've already run it. Does that make sense? And I'll just use some personnel examples. 1 year when I was coordinating, we had incredible receiver depth. Well, we can put those players on the field at the same time. There's nothing that says you have to have a tight end and a running back out there, right? So put them all on the field together and do things that we've already taught them to do and that we know that they're capable of doing, right? And that's actually pretty fun. It's literally like putting a little puzzle together, right? And then you go out there, but to understand someone's capabilities and understand their limitations, you need reps. So and that's kind of where we're going right now. We're excited about all the new guys. We're excited about the running back room for sure. We're still pushing to see what they're capable of and what their limitations are. Because if their capabilities are incredibly high, that's when you get, man, he's got 4 running backs out there at the same time, right? Do it. What the heck? We can, as long as the box doesn't change for the offensive line and the quarterback, we're good.
Andy, on the tight ends, you got 3 who came in. Pretty deep group there. Just talk about the group and what we add.
Competition, right? One of the things that we wanted to develop right away when we were coming here was we had to make sure that we had tight ends that we know that could block C and D gaps for us. And so that's been a big emphasis for us since we got here to help the running backs that we've talked about, right? To help create some one-on-one matchups for our receivers outside and allow us to be multiple. So he's helped with that he's a natural individual that way. But much like we've talked about all these other rooms, because we've talked about the receiver room, we've talked about the quarterback room, we've talked about the running back room, in the parity, in the competition, I'm going to say the same thing about the tight ends, right? And so whereas we grind and we go through fall camp and we go, okay, hey, this guy's the best at this and this guy's the best at that. In all the positions, you can, again, get the puzzle pieces to fit together and grow and then be getting reps. Hey, thank you for asking about the O-line finally. I appreciate that.
What's it like to have 4 guys back while Maju's been in the program? You kind of a solid base there to start with.
Well, it's really helpful because you can maybe kind of like the examples I gave before about now hey, Earl Bostic's been here for a while. He gets it. He knows what these calls are played and they're like that. Now you have him who can grab a brand new person in a program like Pooney and say, hey, listen, this is this technique. This is what we do here, right? This is how, this is what this call means, right? This tag means in the run game or the pass protection game. And so you can have some growth from everybody outside of that group. You know what I mean? What you think would be your starting 5, right? But the challenge is still for those guys, we still have to develop, make ground in that area as well with those 5 guys, right? So we have to simultaneously identify what they need to grow in, get them better, and then to collectively, that whole group can come along and we can create some depth.
Is it noticeable at all, the difference in like weight and strength for the linemen in program from last year to this?
They look different. We haven't practiced with pads yet, right? So I think if you were to talk to me 2 or 3 days from now, I would tell you better about that. But I like the way we're bending, I like the way we're moving, I like the way we look, right? Because that matters, right? A lot.
Jared Casey, the board, that's a 2-point conversion. Obviously, especially at the end, is
What's realistic for Jared Casey? I'm trying to slip in some sort of joke about Applebee's. I feel like I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but he, much like we were just talking about the tight ends, because right now, and he had a great spring, and he's done great through fall camp. He's able to execute everything that we're asking our tight ends to do, from blocking the C gap to running routes, right, at a high level. So bare minimum for my expectation would be that he allows us to be multiple at that position group as well.
Anything else?
One more. You mentioned you would have lost your voice or had lost your voice by this point. I wonder, does that translate to the whole staff, not just the voice part, but specifically with Lance? I mean, you know him so well. Does he seem more comfortable to you this year than?
We're never comfortable, right? That's why I think that's part of the reason we're here, because we're always growing and we're always challenging and kind of pushing ourselves and looking for improvement. But I would say that we know, you know what I mean? Like we have a way better understanding of what some of those limitations are, maybe of individuals, right? We know, more importantly, the individual players on our team a lot better. We know how to connect with player A, and he's different than player B, right? And it's just like any other relationship. The more you're around each other, the more you figure each other out, the more comfortable you are being around individuals, right? And so it stems from that, right? Because when you first come in, a lot of times when I go back to you're losing your voice, that's happening a lot of times because you're communicating to 30 people, you know, what's supposed to happen here. But now it might be just an individual, hey, listen, here's how we do this drill, you right? Here's how we run between drills. Here's how we transition off the field between series, as opposed to having to telling a whole 11 offense, right? All 11 guys.
Sure. So when players know, like you said, when they can play faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the biggest advantage for coaches when they know? I mean, is it a vibe? Is it being more relaxed? Is it being more confident in your guys, yourselves? Whatever? I mean,
All of those things. I think you've kind of answered the question that way with it. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to really coach the details, maybe for guys, right? You're not speaking as much in generalities, right? You know, and so you can say, hey, listen, let's just take the tight end group, for example. Say, hey, Mason Fairchild, here's exactly what you need to do to continue to improve. Here's exactly what you're doing well, right? And you have more energy and time and focus to do that because you're not coaching, you know, 8 other tight ends and how to transition from drills because they don't. And what's starting to happen in our program, and this is great, and this is when it starts to roll and take off, is you get the players that are holding each other accountable for those sort of things, right? I don't need to say anything to this young man. You brought up Tavita before. I don't need to say anything to Tavita about this because one of those other tight ends has already got him and is coaching him, right? Talking to him about it, right? That goes back to the peer teaching thing that we talked about before.